Good evening, and welcome to the Indiana Department of Transportation's Town Hall meeting for the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, commonly called the STIP. This is a 4-year programming document that outlines all projects that Indot will be providing and doing some sort of work on for the next 4 years, those projects that will have federal funding attached. The STIP does not include projects where there are no federal funding attached to the project, such as state-funded projects, with the exception of any project that is a large-scale project that is totally state-funded or not funded with federal funds. Those projects are also included in the STIP because they are considered regionally significant. Tonight, we will be discussing the STIP. We will be discussing the projects listed in the STIP, the format of the STIP, and so forth. We'll start out with a presentation from one of our staff members, and during that presentation we will have some breaks and we will be asking some poll questions of the audience. We would appreciate it if you would join in those poll questions. And also we will provide a period of time where we can do some questions and answers during the debate, during the presentation. We'll break to actually do a few questions, answer some questions as we go, and then we'll move back to the presentation. And when that is finished, we'll open up the floor to anyone that has any questions or comments, and we'll do our best to answer those questions or comments. And if you are joining online, what you will do is in the chat box on the right side of your screen, please print your comment or your question and then hit send. And then if you happen to be joining in by telephone, what you want to first do is hit *6 on your phone, and that will unmute your phone. And then you will be talking to an Indot person who will then transcribe your question and then submit it to us to then address. So that's the format. And occasionally we will also break as well and discuss some interesting facts about Indot itself. To begin the presentation, though, what we'll do is we have some personnel from Indot on site, and they will be introduced here in just a second. And joining us will be today Roy Nunnally, and Roy happens to be Indot's Technical Planning and Programming Manager, as you can see. Michael McNeil will also be joining, and Michael is the STIP Program Coordinator, or the STIP Coordinator, short. And April Leckie will be joining in. April happens to be our Programming Manager. She also is assisting us in developing and presenting the STIP this year. And Brandon Bergoa is our Bike and Pedestrian Coordinator. He's also a planner at Indot. There's Brandon. Jason Castile is with our transit program. He is a transit planner for the state of Indiana, and he deals with all of the transit providers within the state, as well as some of the programs that we fund through grants to different transit providers through the more rural areas as well. And those are our individuals that will be joining us tonight, and some of them will be answering some of the questions as we go along. I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping here, and that happens to be for those that are asking questions or they have comments, please bear in mind that we may have a lot of individuals that do want to ask a question or make a comment, and we'll please make your comments as simple as possible so that we can involve as many people as we can in this particular meeting. In addition to that, there will be a time for questions, and I wanted to point out, on this particular meeting, we are focusing on the STIP itself. You may have some comments or questions about other activities that Indot is involved with, and that's fine, but that is not necessarily, today's forum is not necessarily the venue that you will post those in. However, we don't want to ignore you. So if you do have a question, please send it anyway. We'll try to put it on the side and deal with it later and then give you an answer one way or another. Also, if you miss an opportunity to participate tonight and somehow we don't get to your question, you can always contact us directly at customer service using your phone, and that telephone number is 1-855-463-6888. 6848. And I went through that somewhat fast, so that, and we'll post it at the end of the meeting. That's 1-855-463-6848. In addition, you can contact Indot for you on your computer, and that just simply is what you type in any search engine is Indot for you or indot4u.com, and that will take you to our particular web page for Indot. And in that web page, you can also have an opportunity to submit questions for the STIP. You can view the STIP there as well in draft form and read the entire STIP if you're inclined to do so, or zero in on particular areas that you have an interest in or a project that you have an interest in as well. So on that page, I have personally found that it's just easiest when you get to the Indot homepage, just simply use the search engine, the magnifying glass, and type in Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. That will take you to the page quickly. And then from there, you can actually see a form that you can tap on, and it will bring it up and you can submit your comment there as well. We are currently in the public involvement period where we are out for public comment on the STIP. That will last approximately 45 days. And any comment that we do receive on the STIP, we will provide an answer to. We will then post those answers as part of the STIP when we submit it to Federal Highway for final approval. Having said all of this, I'm going to now turn the meeting over for the presentation, which will be done by Roy Nunnally. And during that presentation, we'll actually break for some survey questions as well. I think I skipped one actually, so I'll just start with the meeting right now with Roy Nunnally's presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roy Nunnally. I am the Director of Planning and Programming in Central Office at Indot. I'm going to talk to you about our State Transportation Improvement Program, known as the STIP. What is the STIP? The STIP is a federally required planning document that covers between 4 or more years. Our STIP is 5 years, and that 5th year is recognized by Federal Highway as illustrative. It is important to note that it is a programming document, not an accounting document or budgeting document. The document itself identifies funding by activity, activity type, phase, funding, and by fiscal year. Indot state fiscal year is used, and that is from July 1st through June 30th. It also includes projects that are federally funded. Includes only projects that are federally funded, including federal highway and FTA projects. And it may have some projects that are state funded if it's deemed regionally significant. Regionally significant means that it has a significant impact to the region. If you got like a stadium come in or a hospital that's going to generate a lot of trips regionally. Same thing with a transportation project. There are some local and state funded projects that are in our STIP document that are also regionally significant. Here are some of the list of some of the projects. We will have more discussions on these in subsequent slides. So what is in the STIP and why is it important? In the STIP, there are a number of improvement projects, roadway improvements, such as added travel lanes, which can be a median construction. It also can be like added through lanes or turn lanes. It can be a new facility, road reconstruction, where we're completely ripping out a facility and replacing it or resurfacing it. It can include operational improvements, such as traffic signal, where we're modernizing the signals to ensure that the signals are smart, they talk to each other up and down the stream of a corridor, and can be adjusted remotely. We also include Intelligent Transportation System, known as ITS, where data is collected and reported to the public. For example, if there's an incident or if there's a slowdown, it's letting the public know that the route time has changed, and either they can stay on or they may select another route. There's also projects such as road diets and complete streets, whereas we are taking projects that may be, or a corridor that may be 4 or 6 lanes, and you are reducing it by a lane or more and converting that lane into a bike lane, parking, and other elements that improves the flow and safety of the corridor. Also includes intersection and interchange improvements, safety improvements such as bike pedestrian crosswalks and sidewalks, slide corrections, which is basically if you're in a rocky terrain and rocks are either sliding down on the road or the road is sliding. Projects that are correcting that will be included in our project, in our STIP. Also, railroad crossing and geometric deficiencies projects, where we're looking at projects that may have some sight distance issues. For example, a lot of tight turns and curves that causes a lot of safety incidences, or high hills where you can't see around the hill or above the hill, and you get on the other side and it's a conflict with a motorized vehicle such as a horse buggy or a bike or pedestrian. Also included are bridge projects such as new bridges, new bridge structures, rehab, or when they're redecking the bridge facility, and various maintenance activities such as inspections, bridge painting, debris removal, which is basically they're taking what's underneath the bridge. If there's sediment in the riverbed or trees or other items that has washed into the bridge, they do remove that. It includes also small structures that are 4 feet or less, culverts, which are very large. We call it pipes or facilities, pipe and pipe lining. But we don't only just include roadway projects, we include also non-roadway improvements, and that include transit and passenger rails improvements and projects that are using federal funds. For example, operational assistance at the transit agencies, vehicle purchases such as vans, buses, or rail car purchases, equipment purchases such as kiosks or communication equipment or ticket taking equipment. We also include items such as improvements to infrastructure, you might be replacing rail tracks, making improvements to the building itself or bus shelters, or making emergency repairs. Also included are parks, if they're national park improvements, they're using federal funds for their transportation and roadway. That is included in our document, as well as trails and dedicated bike and pedestrian facilities, planning and landscaping if it's part of a roadway project, and also just planning and technical studies. So why is the STIP important? It is important because it's a comprehensive list of multimodal projects, programs, and phases over multiple years. Oftentimes, when you look at the STIP, you might see a project that may get repeated in the STIP 2 or 3 times. It may be in a phase where it's in the preliminary engineering phase where we're doing a lot of scoping analysis. So that might be listed in 1 year, and then the next year they might look at, it may be in another year that says right of way. We're repurchasing land and things of that nature. And then it may be in another year for other activities as well. So it is a multimodal list of projects. It is coordinated closely with our planning partners, our resource agencies, that might be Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Protection, Army Corps of Engineers, tribal units, transit, and others. And it's also closely coordinated with our planning documents. It established a roadmap for short and long-term plans for continuous progress. And most of all, and most importantly, it is a federally required document that also a lot of things that hinge on the STIP includes federal funds approval, federal document approval, and permitting.
Thank you, Roy. At this time, I want to remind everybody to, if you want to participate and ask a question, if you're using your phone, you can press *6 to unmute, and then you'll be able to ask a question. As well, if you happen to be online, then you can go into this chat room or the chat box on the right side of the screen and type your question, and then hit enter as well. We're trying to deal primarily with questions about the STIP here today. Occasionally we'll get some questions that are not related to the STIP as well. We did receive one comment already, and it has to do, let's see, Michelle sent this comment in. It's a very good question as well. And it has to do with trains sitting on the tracks and basically blocking streets and crossings. We are primarily not here today to discuss this, but we'll pass it along to our railroad section. What Indot does, or what it tries to do in these cases, and we don't always do this because they're very expensive, is we try to occasionally do in severe cases where there are a lot of vehicles on the roadway and a lot of average daily traffic on that roadway. We will participate with local governments to find grant money so that they can build railroad overpasses and separate the grade out. Those are not that common because, one, they're very expensive, and two, we don't do them that often. Well, on our state highways, if we do have a problem and it's a serious problem, then we will consider that as an alternative as a solution to those situations. But we'll pass that along to our rail people. Generally, it's a local issue primarily because oftentimes those tracks these crossings are blocking city streets and not necessarily state highways. And I know that the local government has a lot of difficulty with this particular question as well. Thank you so much for your question on that, and I think we will now move on with the presentation. Any moment now, we're going to move on to the presentation.
So there was a question that why is there such a long time to why is it critical to plan so far ahead? And a lot of that has to do with a lot of the projects that you see today, the major projects that took years to develop. It wasn't within a 5-year time frame in most cases. It's usually 10, 12 years because you're having to find the funding. There's a lot of environmental analysis that goes on with these projects. And so that's the reason why it takes such a while for us, and we plan that far out. It takes time to get that money to coordinate with utilities and other players and a lot of stakeholder and public outreach. So typically, usually the quickest development for a large project is about 6 to 7 years, and it can take up to 10 years. Next, we're going to talk about how is the STIP developed. And if the screen can get a little bigger. So Indot STIP is developed on a 2-year cycle, and it is amended monthly. Our development process includes extensive coordination with our various planning partners in their documentation. For example, we coordinate with some of our multimodal partners and some of the freight and mobility plans, the rail plans. We also look at our long-range transportation plan, which is a 20-year plus plan. Currently, is not project specific; it's more policy oriented. And our Next Level Indiana program that was developed by our governor with billions of dollars that goes towards funded projects for the next 20 years. That typically goes down to our 10-year asset management plan, where we're looking at the life cycle cost of all of our assets that we own, and then we can determine when certain improvements are needed within that 10-year frame to optimize the life of that asset. At that point, that dwindles down to our 5-year construction plan, which kind of dwindles down to our STIP. So the 5-year construction plan and our STIP are pretty much the same, with that 5th year again being illustrative. Stakeholder and public involvement opportunities are included. The development of our STIP is a very collaborative, decentralized, and centralized planning approach or programming approach. Typically, each year we have regional planning coordination meetings late in the spring and early summer, where we invite individuals from representatives from MPOs, RPOs, the districts are there, the central office there, and we have different folks from multimodal and some local officials that are also participate in these meetings. We talk about concerns, needs, future needs, safety issues, projects, land use, economic development, all types of items are discussed. The districts are also responsible for opening the call for state projects, again, feeding that 5th year and beyond, and that typically is open in July of each year and lasts through January 15th. At that point, the district performs their needs analysis based on the input they receive from regional meetings, stakeholder inputs, from just analysis that they've done that identify some of the deficiencies and needs. And they do some preliminary scoping, cost estimating, and then they prioritize what the needs are by asset within their region. Projects are then submitted to our central office, to the program management group and the 4 asset management teams. Now, the program management group is a group of directors and executives that includes funding and asset management and mobility planning and strategic planning. And they are responsible for establishing the goals for the state. You know, what percent of our bridge are going to be in X condition by 10, 15, 20 years? How much funding is going to go towards safety versus bridge versus mobility? And so they make that decisions. But the 4 asset teams are made up of district representatives for each of the 4 asset teams. So you have the safety asset team, the bridge asset team, the roadway asset team, which basically does everything from pavement reconstruction, resurfacing, rock slides, and also address some of the geometric issues, deficiency issues we discussed earlier. And then we have the mobility asset team that deals a lot with the operational improvements, the signals, ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems, added travel lanes, road diets. They deal with that. And did I mention all 4? Yes, I did. And so that's basically how that works. The projects are then selected from a district prioritization effort. The asset teams are programmed to look at the project at a statewide need. So they don't represent their own district. They try to get the projects to represent the state. And after that stage, we do continue to work with our public and our MPO and RPO partners. So there's a lot of stakeholder involvement and activities at that stage. Once we get all that down, the plan is submitted to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration for their approval. The STIP is developed in about a 6 to 7 month time frame. Typically, the most active portion of the STIP is the draft list of projects in coordination. And this is important because the projects have to be coordinated and consistent with the MPO's tips for the state projects that we have listed. And oftentimes it requires air quality conformity. We have to test to make sure that it does not, that it meets our goals and standards and targets set for like bridge pavement conditions and safety conditions as well. So there's a lot of coordination between this, and And that part takes the longest. And then we spend time with the STIP verbiage, setting targets. Again, what percent of the bridges are going to be in X condition at X time, and funding, and determine what the funding targets are per year. At that stage, we have a 45-day comment period, which we are in now, that started April the 9th and will end May 25th. When we have meetings, people are available to open and review the draft document. And once that closes, the team processes all the comments and make revisions to the document. And from that stage, we send the final draft document to Federal Highway, and they have about 30 days to review and approve or deny approval. Who's involved in the development of the STIP? You are. You are our most important asset, and we'll get more discussion in the next few slides.
Thank you, Roy. We're taking a break in the presentation right now, and we do have a poll question, and so we're going to go to the audience and ask. The question is, let's get to know about our audience. You can't get away from some market research, and we're going to do just that right now. And basically, what best describes you? And we're going to open up the poll in a second here. And when we do, we'll allow a little bit of time for everybody to answer the question, and then we'll try to get answers back to you. So, thank you. So I'm waiting to see if the poll shows up, and the answers are popping in right now. I'm smiling because I'm using a very small screen to look at, so they have to blow it up so I can have any chance of reading it. And if you don't mind, I will squint a little bit here. And the polling questions are still coming in and still being calculated. We'll bring this to a close in about 10 seconds here. So everybody, please wrap up your responses now. And from the responses, I am gratified to see that the general public makes up the largest percentage of respondents here, currently at about 41%, followed by, let's see here, advocacy groups, general public as well. And then also consulting firms are present. And then we also have some local and localized government as well. So thank you very much for participating in the poll. And I see that it is rising yet, not quite completely calculated. And the general public's part of the mixture is growing, which again, we're very gratified to see. We're very glad you were able to join the meeting today. I'd like to remind everyone, if you do have a question or a comment that you'd like to make, you can use your phone if you happen to be calling in, and you can press *6 to unmute your phone, and someone from Indot will be there to answer your question. And an hour to record your question and pass along to me, I should say. And then also, if you are using the online version, you simply go to the chat box and go from there. And at this point, we will turn this back over to Roy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. So as we talked about, who's involved with this development of STIP? You are, and your voice matters. And there's plenty of opportunities for public involvement within the various documents that we produce, from our long-range transportation plan, our statewide freight mobility plan, our asset management plan, and our American for Disability Act transition plan, as well as corridor studies that go on across the state. And we are also getting input from our freight and logistics industries, committees, MPOs, RPOs. So there's a lot of different things that you can look into and participate in that will feed into our STIP document. districts, MPOs, metropolitan planning organizations, and regional planning organizations contribute heavily to the development of our STIP. Indot districts play a critical role in the development of our STIP. We have 6 Indot district offices that cover the state in manageable planning regions. Our districts serve as the front line in terms of direct coordination with stakeholders, local officials, and citizens. Typically, whenever anything that happens and goes on, the districts are the first to get the word in. And that's who you see typically when you see construction projects and things of that nature. The districts manage the annual call for projects, and they often work directly with the MPO with their tips, making adjustments, reviewing the tips, and also submitting changes for the STIP. As the districts actually house the project managers within their areas. The districts also participate in public or technical advisory and board meetings held at the MPO. Typically, they're on those committees and work groups, and those meetings are typically open to the public. They're also involved in the 4 asset management teams that we discussed as well. MPOs also play a critical role in the development of our STIP. MPOs are typically bodies that that are with 50,000 plus populations, and they consist of policy boards and organizations designed to carry out the planning process. They serve as a forum for local government to provide short and long-term plans to address transportation-related concerns and issues, and they facilitate board and technical meetings, again, that are open to the public. Some MPOs, they have meetings, board meetings or technical advisory committee meetings monthly. Some have it every other month, quarterly, and we do have a few that have meetings twice a year. The best way to get that information is going to the indianampo.com site below, and you can find out more information. But they are responsible for maintaining their regional and long-range transportation plans, studies, and they serve as a primary source of local and regional public and stakeholder outreach into our planning process. RPOs also play a key role, similar to MPOs, but they carry out the transportation planning process for small non-metropolitan urban areas, metropolitan urban and rural areas. They do support the district offices with planning support and provide a lot of valuable information on local planning, land use, and economic development. They know the pulse of their communities. They also provide us and make us aware of their local throughfare plans, and they do review and provide us input into our regional meetings as to what the needs are going to be. They do participate in providing input into, again, our annual call for stateful projects through their involvement with local officials. For more information, there's a website at the bottom that will take you to, it's called the Indiana Association of Regional Council, that you can find information about each RPO and their contact information. And I turn it over to Jay.
Thank you again, Roy. Just a reminder, the chat box is open on the right side of the screen for those joining in by computer. And if you are using your telephone, please press *6 and someone will then be able to answer your phone question. Doug has a question for us, and that is, in view of the federal government's infrastructure funding proposal, including $80 billion for passenger rail, what are INDOT's plans to restore passenger rail service between Indianapolis and Chicago? Amtrak has an expansion plan called Amtrak Connects US, with a proposed corridor service between Chicago, Indianapolis, and Chicago, Is Indot working with Amtrak on this opportunity? I will wing this question, the answer to this question myself, because we did not bring our rail folks in on this meeting tonight. We'll remedy that for future meetings. But the way to look at this, Doug, is first, we hear there's $80 billion that they're working on. It is a proposal on the federal level through Congress. We will have to wait and see just what happens with that, if those funds are actually, if they materialize, if they become real or not. And then we'll decide what we and how much Indiana might get of that, and then how we would apply that towards passenger rail. I think the obvious place where passenger rail would expand back would be that route you're talking about, which is Indianapolis to Chicago and Chicago back to Indianapolis. That's probably the most logical one at this time. Andrea has a question. And does the infrastructure plan include expanding public transportation, such as bus service for cities and towns? Portage, Indiana needs public transportation, considering it's continuing to grow, now the third largest city in the region, Northwest Indiana. This question I'm going to turn over to Jason Castile from our transit section, and he will be able to answer that question for you. Jason, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hey, you're talking about Portage, Indiana, up in Porter County. That there actually is public transit service in that area, and that is basically controlled and ran by the NERPC, Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission. And there are, right in Portage, there are a couple of different transit operators that kind of overlap. I think they run it through Opportunity Enterprises and maybe one of the Porter County councils up there. But I would try to get a hold of the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission and see what they can tell you about getting rides there. Those are demand response systems up there, and a lot of times they're mistaken for being elderly or disabled only, because they do happen to use smaller buses that often have handicap lifts on them. But those are funded as public transportation operators up there. So yeah, I would contact NERPC on that one.
Thank you, Jason. At this point, we will rejoin. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, jumping ahead. Bob Scott has a question. Now, why can't the state regulate when cities and towns perform their infrastructure upgrades? I mean, why would you close down multiple lanes and streets in Bloomington during move-in week? I can tell you Indot does its best to coordinate its projects with local communities so that we don't close our major transportation links to state highways at the same time they're closing local roadways. There's not always the best cooperation with regard to local communities with regard to their own particular projects if they're not anywhere near a state highway. So the cities are basically, and counties are their own responsible governments and governmental units, and they do make their infrastructure improvements based on their own particular needs and when they think it's appropriate to do that as well. But I will agree, sometimes it is difficult, especially if you're talking moving week and we start closing down a number of streets and possibly even state highways. So again, Indot does its best to coordinate and try not to do closures when there are other infrastructure improvements taking place. Thank you. So we will give this back to Roy.
Thank you. How can I access STIP projects? One way to access STIP projects is through our Next Level Road portal. This one is a comprehensive list of projects. You can either go online and type in Next Level Roads and it'll take you to our website, or you can just type in the address that you see here in the slide. The Next Level Roads portal includes STIP and also non-STIP projects. It may include active projects that are funded. And, again, STIP includes federally funded projects or state and local projects that are deemed regionally significant. So in the Next Level Roads program, you might get projects that are that don't meet those requirements. So that is the most comprehensive way. A lot of times people want to know, not really if it's in the STIP or not, they just want to know information about a project in their area. They want to know what's going on in the area. And that's the best place to do that. This interactive map allows you to click on each of the pins or dots to drill down for more information about project. You can also display information by district, by active and non-active projects, and also by project type, which is the bridge, or if you're interested in community crossing projects or pavement or added traveling type projects. You can just show just those and look at some of the trends. But the best way to get and access the projects is to go directly into the STIP document. And there you'll find pages sorted by county and other attributes that you can see solely the STIP projects. And you can find that at the link at the bottom here in any of our STIP or amended STIP documents. I'll turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Roy. We're going to ask another polling question. And that question will be, what type of Indot project matters to you most? And then after the poll, we'll answer a few more questions. We're starting to get quite a few questions, so I want to start dedicating a little bit more time to answering questions. So we'll proceed with this poll, and if you see it on screen, please respond, and it will calculate on screen. And as soon as it's done, I will try to then read it on my very small screen here. And we're very interested in this question because we did a test run earlier with some individuals, and I wonder how these responses will compare. So we now have some responses. It looks like at this point, it is roads that matter the most to people. And then that's sort of a common sense question. We are still calculating, though. Roads is still the winner by far. That's where we do spend most of our money. That's where most of the traveling public is at present time anyway. And we're still calculating. But our other modes of transportation are just as important to us as well. We are seeing trends in Indiana where people are starting to do more micro mobility. That would be non-traditional transportation, no longer using cars, and in urban areas using everything from pedestrian activities, bicycles, down to scooters as well. And we're actually studying that, seeing what kind of impact that will be for us in the future. So at this time, we have quite a pie chart. So I'm going to just hit on the key things here, the key items which were mentioned. And that is roads is still the winner by far, but the percentage has gone down to about 38%, almost 39%, followed by sort of a tie between bicycles and pedestrian trails. And also, it looks like bridges obviously are important as well, for obvious reasons. So bicycles seem to be very important. We'll talk a little bit more about bicycles and trails in a little bit. I just one thing on trails I might note is the STIP does not specifically have a lot of trails listed in it, primarily because Indot has shifted the funding from federal funding for trails to more state funding. And we found it easier, and we provide money directly to the Department of Natural Resources, and they provide grants to individuals individual organizations and groups to then build the particular trails. And they have found it far easier to do so. It frees up DNR from some of the regulations we have with actually getting the projects listed in the STIP and the various difficulties they have to go through. So having said that, I'll move on and let Roy continue with his presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. So how can you get involved? How can you provide input into our STIP? One is, just as you're doing today, attend public meetings. We have a few of these meetings set up. The other is connect with your MPO, RPO, and/or district office. Oftentimes, again, they serve as some of the front line, and oftentimes when we have regional meetings, someone had mentioned about Bloomington and, how can we regulate some of the construction activities at the local level so that, they're not, performing these activities when, there's a major event. And a lot of times that involves having a discussion at these regional meetings where we can ask those questions. When's the best time to do that? What's going on in the area? When's the, I know here we have IUPUI downtown, and, when school's in, it's a totally different traffic pattern. So it's always good to attend those meetings and coordinate that with your MPOs, RPOs, and with your district offices. And oftentimes that they coordinate with the locals. You can also sign up for our email communications at GovDelivery email sign up at the address down below. You can also share your thoughts with our online STIP comment form. The site is listed below, as well as you can send an email to our email program coordinator, or mail them directly at the address that you see here below at 100 Senate Ave in our government center in room N758. For more general questions, you can just type in Indot for you, and it'll take you to our online portal where you have experts there that'll take your comments statewide and make sure that they get to the right people, whether that's online or on the phone with the 1-800 number. They do an excellent job of providing response and actions if it entails that, and can lead you to the right person. So even if you have something that's more STIP related and you send it to Indot for you, it will get back to our teams. So very powerful place if you have general transportation questions or requests. And I believe that concludes my presentation. At this point, I will turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Roy. Very good presentation. At this time, we'll start answering a few more questions and trying to, we have quite a few in the queue, so I want to make sure we start getting to these. And let's see, I do want to bring up, Anthony Smith did have a question. And his question has to do with, does Indot have plans to ever do a total overhaul of US 40 in Wayne County, specifically Centerville? And I think I might have an answer to that. Just give me just a second here. And that is, let's see, we do have a pavement project, and it was just awarded. And so that would not show up in the current STIP, but there is a pavement project that was just awarded. The limits of that project are from 8.8 miles east of State Road 1 to 9.2 miles east of State Road 1. So we'll be doing some work on that, and hopefully that will take care of your concern there. So, and we'll follow up, try to get you a little more of the details on that as well. So, and there is a question from the phone, and that is there a percentage of the STIP that's actually set aside for pedestrian and cycling? And if so, how does Indiana rank compared to our region, the Midwest, and nationally? I'll answer the first part. We don't specifically set money aside in the STIP for bicycle and pedestrian at this time. What we do set aside is money to take care of ADA improvements along roads that we're working on, and also where we have deficiencies in ADA. So that's a priority for us. We do have sort of a set-aside program for that, and a commitment that we try to meet every year as part of our ADA compliance plan. Now, with regard to pedestrian, bicycle projects, they're usually not standalone projects. They're usually part of a larger project or even a smaller project that's already in the STIP. And we have difficulty, unfortunately, tracking those to some extent. I'll give you an example. State Road 46 in Bloomington, Indiana. We had a resurfacing project going on there last year, I believe in 2020, might have been late 2019, but a resurfacing project. When we were originally going to do that, it's just simple. We're going to come in and resurface the roadway, State Road 46 through parts of Bloomington. Locally, individuals came to us, Indot, and also the city came to Indot, and they asked, hey, you're going to repave this anyway. We need bike lanes. Can you do something for us? Now's the perfect time to paint those on. We responded with adding, what we did was we reduced the number of lanes, and then we added bicycle lanes on either side that were actually marked, and it worked out much better. And oddly enough, while it seems counterintuitive, even though we reduced lanes, we had fewer crashes and the traffic flow is much better, and that was done. We don't really record that in the STIP so much because that was part of a resurfacing project. So I'm going to turn this over to Brandon Bergoa. He's our bike peg coordinator, and he can tell you where we rank. And I'm going to kind of, before he takes over, I'm going to give him sort of a lead bicycle-friendly ranking for the state, and I think Indiana jumped dramatically in recent years, and he can maybe explain why. So, Brandon, it's yours.
Hey, this is Brandon at Indot. I am very happy and proud to say that Indot has made great strides in terms of not just a regional ranking, but thinking in terms of the future for bicycle, pedestrian, and other micromobility initiatives that are going to be happening in the transportation world. According to the League of American Bicyclists, Indiana is now ranked 24th in the nation in their bicycle-friendly state program, which is actually up from our previous ranking of 38th a few years prior. So Indot is currently working on a lot of different initiatives to identify when and where opportunities arise for having bicycle and pedestrian projects be a part of larger road reconstructions and restriping, as Jay had mentioned. Other initiatives include bicycle and pedestrian plan index, kind of keep track so we are aware of what local cities and towns are doing. We can collaborate them on our state facilities, looking at network planning to identify opportunities in our transportation systems.
Thank you, Brandon. I might also point out that we didn't mention it here, and it's not part of the STIP itself, but the governor's program for the Next Level Trails, which was initiated a couple of years ago, where some of the lease funds from the toll road were actually dedicated towards trail development in Indiana. That program is actually run through the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, but we did pass along something like $90 million for that particular program and a vast expansion of the trail network in Indiana. So I did want to mention that as well, and that while that's sort of a dedicated question here. Here's a frequently asked question. Has the COVID pandemic impacted funding allocation in the current and future planning assumptions? I'll try to answer that. And we don't have our financial people here today, so it will be sort of a general answer. Yes, Indot took in less money, or the state of Indiana took in less money. The federal government took in less money when the pandemic hit in its worst form, and that was primarily April and May of 2020. And that's when much of the nation and the state of Indiana was sort of on a lockdown or a pause, and people started working more from home, and some businesses, most businesses closed down that dealt with the public. The result was traffic on the roadways decreased dramatically. We were still seeing some truck traffic as well, but generally, I think our traffic counts on the Indiana state highways dropped by about 38 to 40%. That translates into less dollars being spent on gasoline, and that is our primary source of revenue for the state of Indiana for the roadways. Not the only source, but it's the primary source. And it also is a primary source for the federal government through their program as well. That was, I'm happy to say, somewhat short-lived. It is not completely over, but we have seen a trend since probably August of last year where we have seen traffic pick up. Average daily traffic has increased, not dramatically, but steadily increased. We're now up to the latest figures I saw, and they may be a little outdated now, but the latest figures I saw, we were about 85% of where we were on traffic travel anyway, prior to the pandemic hitting. So we are seeing an increase now in dollars coming into the coffers that can then be sent to Indot for the roadways itself and directly into the STIP itself. On that note, the state of Indiana has weathered this storm somewhat well. This particular STIP, we have projected our funding out for the next few years. We pretty much kept it flatlined beyond the first year, and we're in pretty good shape. We are capable of, at presently, everything that's a state project in the STIP that's funded with federal dollars. We have sufficient funds in federal dollars for those particular projects, as well as the local match, the state money to match that, the 20% state match on that. So that pretty much answered that question, I hope. Another frequently asked question is, given recent discussions on jobs, American infrastructure bill, how will this impact decision-making, specifically support for transit and active transportation? Brandon has already discussed active transportation somewhat, and also support for that. We're seeing we're committing more and more of our resources towards not only studying active transportation, but committing to projects where we could provide some infrastructure related to active transportation. Our primary focus right now is on pedestrian transportation. We're currently doing a study. This is, and this will translate into projects in the STIP. Maybe not right now, in the latter years of the STIP probably, but in the future years definitely. And what we're trying to assess at this point is, where do we have sidewalks along our state highways? Where do we have deficiencies where there are no sidewalks? Where should there be sidewalks? And more, and then the next question to answer is, where there are sidewalks, what kind of condition are they in? So that's what we're assessing now. Once we know what we have to measure, then we can start moving forward with trying to dedicate a little bit more funding. We're hoping a lot more funding towards pedestrian activities to start with. You are seeing a little bit more bike and bicycle activities, or not activities, but infrastructure type projects with bike lanes on our highways, something you would never see 15 years ago. We would just simply not consider it, but we are considering it now. So Greg from Facebook, are contractors doing traffic control around construction areas? In most cases, that's true. I will double check on that to make sure I provide you with proper information. But yes, in general, I believe that the contractors do provide that, but under Indot's guidance through our contracting capabilities, also with our inspectors who are out there on the scene. So we have a temporary pause. We have more questions though, so I'm going to go to some other questions briefly and try to address some that we might not have brought up before. And I might point out that if we do not have enough time to answer everyone's questions tonight, they will be answered. You will get a response, and that's if we have your address. And if we don't have your address, you'll still see a response. We will post that online, how the questions themselves, and also the response that will also show up in the final STIP document as well. And you can also go to the STIP page itself, and there's a comment form, and we have the address listed for you on the screen. It's in.gov//indot/3132.htm. That's how you get directly to it. For me, I just simply type in a search engine, Indiana Department of Transportation. When you're there, you type in under our search engine, Transportation Improvement Program. You'll get there. So I'm kind of going through some of the questions here. And Eddie has a question about I-74. And he's saying I-74 is in need of repair in Shelbyville. You have to switch lanes because of the rough pavement. I'm not sure if we actually have that particular project in the STIP at present, but we will find out if we do have a project for resurfacing or some sort of treatment in that area and if it's in the STIP. Now, I will point out in some cases, maintenance items such as if the pavement is rough because there are a lot of potholes, that will be taken care of through our maintenance program, and that is something that does not show up in the STIP. If it's a resurfacing project on I-74, that will definitely show up in the STIP. So we will check through the STIP and through our district and then get you an answer for that, Eddie. And moving on, Annie, she has a question. In the long-term projects, is there any overheads for the US 31 in Miami County plan? Sometimes it's difficult to cross with farm machinery, especially in the summer when vacations are taken. There's very much traffic. I have been told that there will not be very many in the county. We'll check on that and get back to you. I don't know right off the top of my head if we do or not. I know that we're always looking at US 31. It's always on our radar, so I will find out and get you some answers on that. And moving down the list, and I do apologize for not having all of the answers right now, but please bear in mind, we have a couple thousand projects in the STIP itself, plus the general questions that might come in. So again, we'll do our best to answer those questions and get those to you and make sure that they're addressed. And also, if we don't, if somehow they do slip through, which they should not, or you have a follow-up question, you can always use Indot for you, and we do get back to you on that. We personally tested it in-house with our own staff where we had problems, and we would bring them up and see the response and how long it took to respond. It works out pretty well. So let's see. I think I pretty much touched on a lot of these. There is a rail question, and it's a passenger rail question. And again, I apologize for not bringing our rail people here today, but we will get an answer to this question. And that had to do with, from John, and it has to do with Amtrak suggesting making the Cardinal a daily train, adding a Louisville leg. How is Indot preparing for these proposals? We'll see when the proposal comes. We'll have to see who will fund that proposal. If Amtrak is doing it, then that's great. Amtrak, I do know that Amtrak is responsible for its own trains for the most part, except the one that we ran to Chicago. And the tracks that they use, I would have to check on that, but Amtrak does not have, I believe, dedicated track that owns in Indiana. It may. I'll check on that and make sure one way or another. I think they lease track from some of the other rail companies to run their trains. So Indot would be preparing should that actually happen. And we will probably be very interested in seeing amenities for train stations and things like that to assist Amtrak. But again, I'll find out for you and get that answer to you. So I'm just checking a few more question locations here and see if we have anything. And I think I may have answered most of these, if not all of those. Are there plans to create a pedestrian bridge across US 24 in Huntington at Indiana 5? I don't have an answer for that right now. I have not heard of anything. Brandon, if you are there, have you heard of anything? The Indot is proposing for a pedestrian bridge across US 24. In some cases, those would be local projects, but they more than likely would entail federal funding, and we would probably participate in some fashion. So Brandon, if you are there, can you quickly tell us what you know, if anything? And if not, then Brandon will get you an answer.
Hey, so I am not currently aware of a pedestrian bridge crossing US 24 in Huntington at Indiana 5. We are always looking for opportunities to start getting this, I guess, these identified needs in our register, starting to talk to the districts, the local cities and towns, to making sure that we're on the same page about what needs to happen when the time comes for a project to happen there. So we are always looking for these opportunities to be ahead of the curve. So when something does happen or when things do move forward, that we are ready to work with everybody that we can.
Thank you, Brandon. Tell you what, if we do not have anything in the STIP currently, and if we have nothing in the plans to do that, your question is important, because now you've alerted us to apparently there's some sort of need for some pedestrian crossing, possibly bridge across US 24. So it's something we'll look into, and your comment may not result in a project right away, but if we get several comments and if there is an issue locally, then I'm sure there'll be more activity towards something of that nature, some sort of infrastructure or crossing at that particular location so that it's safe to cross 24. Just want to point that out. Sometimes it seems when you make a comment that it's ignored, but it does matter. It does, your comment does add up, and it alerts us to potential problems along the system. Pedestrian bridges cost a lot of money, but we are dedicating more funds towards that sort of thing in the future. So that sort of infrastructure, again, we're interested in keeping people safe when they cross our highways as much as possible. Thank you. We're coming near the end of our question and answer period, and actually our town hall meeting for the statewide transportation improvement program. And I quickly wanted to mention that there are going to be 3 other meetings. Roy had already brought this up, but the first one is Wednesday, April 28th at 6 p.m. The next one is going to be Thursday, April 29th at 1 p.m. And we will have a follow-up meeting on Tuesday, May 4th. That will be our final meeting. And that one will be at 1 p.m. again. If we did not answer your question now, please feel free to join in the other meetings. Please feel free to tell other individuals you know about that these meetings are taking place. And again, if you have comments that we still need to address that you didn't get a chance to mention here today, please submit those through the Indot for you if it has to do with a generalized Indot type comment. If it's a project you saw in the STIP or a question you have about a project in the STIP, please submit that to us as well, and we will include that particular question as well as the answer in the final STIP itself. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We're here still. We'll stay on as long as we can until we're actually thrown off of this site to answer any questions that still might come in. So please tell us what your questions are. I will try to spot those as they come in on my chat box as well and bring those up until such time as I disappear from the screen. I would like to thank everybody for joining in today. We're very glad that you could come.